So thank you for being here. And I also want to thank Nelson and Reed, who did a lot of the organizing for the meeting. Oh, there you are, over there. Alicia, Melissa, and Jeff Terry, are you here? You should sort of as Jeff, you should all know Jeff by now because he organized all the facilities and kept you all on track to get here. There are also a group of VPICU data scientists here, so I'm going to make them stand up to embarrass them. Come on, Melissa, stand up. Up. And Eugene, Alice, Mike. Alicia's not here. Oh! And they've been responsible for a lot of the research we've done, but also for the architecture in the PDC. Okay, you can sit back down now. And although this may not be the main purpose of the meeting, it will be a failure if we don't have a lot of fun. We're all pediatric intensivists. We love what we do, and this is a particular subset that if something happens in this room, the field of pediatric critical care will be set way back, especially in information technology, data science, etc. So I'm glad you're here. Now, there are 3 questions. Well, this is good. I can't even count because I actually think there are 4 on this slide. I want to try and figure out, with all of your help, what the VPICU can be doing in the future. Where does it go from here? How do we leverage the Pediatric Data Collaborative? And some of you here may not know what that is, but you will shortly. And you can't answer those questions unless we have an idea about where pediatric critical care is going, what our needs are, and ultimately how informatics solutions and AI applications needed for peds critical care, how we get there. So that's the sort of reason we're here. This expectation maximization equation down here at the bottom is what we're not doing. I'm sorry, Orkin, there will be no higher math during this meeting, unless it's in the corners while you're talking. Good. Well, this is where you all live. I'm sorry to give you PTSD, but this is what we have to deal with all the time in a time-constrained, mission-critical, highly complex environment that requires teamwork and is very expensive, not just in dollars, but in lives and in our own professional strains and stresses. So several people have, over the years and over the last few hours, said, where did this come from? So a quick run by. There's a laser pointer here. Oh, good. This guy's name is Max Whittier. Max Whittier was a Maine potato farmer who managed to put together the princely sum of $25 and spent half of it to get to California, $12.50 to take a train from Maine to California then, where he took the other $12.50, bought a pan and some camping gear, and went up in the San Gabriel Mountains behind my house. He hung around there for a few years and came back down with a bag of gold. It's hard to believe these things really happen. This was in 1895-ish, 1900. He wanted to be, and being a farmer, he wanted to buy a lot of land to grow oranges on. He thought that would be the way to make his fortune, and he bought land, planted oranges. Those trees died, so he bought some more land, planted oranges. Those trees died, more land. Story went on for a while. He couldn't figure out why everywhere he planted trees, this black oozy stuff came out of the soil in the LA basin and killed his trees. By the time he gave up orange farming, he owned the oil fields around Los Angeles, what became. And most of those were actually in Beverly Hills and property they still own, Rodeo Drive, etc. So after Max got there, I had the opportunity to go to Los Angeles where the man from the foundation said, okay, we're going to get you funded. What research do you do? And I said, really love hypoxic pulmonary vasoreactivity. I really love endothelial cell research. I've got this exciting stuff with endocardial endothelium, and really I think it helps rate. and I said, come on, you got to have something else. I just finished an MBA, and I had come to realize that perhaps there was something in information technology that might help healthcare. And over the next, he said, come on. And I said, well, he could like blah, blah, blah. And he writes furiously for about 25 minutes. He says, now I can get millions for that. And 3 months later, he did. And that was the origin of the virtual PICU. These are some collaborators. I like this one. It's about 2 feet from here down the road. And this was in 1997. This is a little memory of 1997. Now, this did sit on my desk for a long time at Hopkins until Jim Fackler showed me how to turn it on. And I was never allowed to own one of these because Mike Dean had the corner of these, but he did show me how to work it so I could do my lab results. And yes, this actually was in Mike Dean's PICU about 5 years ago. Is it still, do you still do paper records, Mike? I think we all yearn for those days. So that was 1997. And with a few $1 million that the Whittiers generously gave me, I got together with a few people, and I apologize because it was a while ago, and I'm not sure everybody is on the slide that was at the first VPICU meeting. But you probably recognize, well, this is Judy Berger at CHOP, Adrian Randolph, I don't know who that is. Barry's going to be here tomorrow, Ken Tegmeyer, and Steve Pond, who really was sort of a pioneer back then. And we got together at Barry Markowitz's house in St. Louis and laid the course for the virtual PICU. This was what we toasted the virtual. This is the first drink we had to toast the virtual PICU. Do you remember this? It was great stuff. Unfortunately, I've never found it again. We didn't drink as much in those days. This was it for the whole group. Okay, so what is the virtual PICU? Founded in 97 by that group of people, funded by a donation from the Whittier Foundation, and has built multi-disciplinary teams of clinicians, researchers, statisticians, computer scientists, etc. And the motivation back then was ICUs were isolated. You could go to one ICU and there was the gospel how to practice critical care, and you could drive across town to the next one, and that's all malpractice. And it occurred to me that they couldn't both be right. Or maybe they were, but we would never figure it out if we didn't start sharing data and take advantage of information technology to do it. We had little shared experience, no clear national picture, didn't know how many PICU beds there were, didn't know how long patients stayed in the PICU, didn't know what the mortality rate was in PICUs, except for our own, etc. And the desire to learn from the bedside data. What bothered me is data was becoming increasingly digital, and nobody was saving any of that digital data. That had all the information, well, not all, it had quite a lot of information, would be very useful. And in 1997, the penetration of the internet to hospitals was under 10%. Hard to believe. And computer use, well, forget that. Okay, so this was the vision of the virtual PICU. I think it still fits. We'll create a common information space. I will confess, we didn't know what that meant. For the international community of caregivers providing critical care for children with the goal of improving the care for every critically ill child. We had 4 goals. Extended databases. Let's get the data together. Let's learn from the data. You may think that's such an obvious idea now, but I did stand in Natcher Auditorium and make a speech. I was invited as an innovator by Elias Zerhouni. I stood on the stage and said, look, I'm fed up with hypothesis-driven research. I just want to collect the data and have it teach me how critical illness happens to children. I got booed, and they actually threw paper at me. It was pretty good. Elias, who was the director of the NIH at the time, came down for lunch. I'm standing in the corner by myself. Everybody else is over there. He says, oh, you must have given a great talk. So we've obviously focused on this, and this is where the VPICU spends most of its time now. Now, you might recognize we were interested in using data to improve quality back then, and that was a spin-off that has become VPS. Now, this is not a new problem. That's a data repository. That held books that were salvaged from the wreck of the Dark Ages in a monastery at Lindisfarne, Holy Isle, off the coast of Northumberland. However, all of that data was no good until they had safe roads and people could actually share it. Well, we are in a very data-rich environment, and it's easy to share it nowadays. I think, I just like to make my old favorite joke, which is, we have a lot of data. Okay, now you get it. Okay. This is a picture from a, is that Hopkins or is that, that's Hopkins, right? Yeah. No?
That's the old
Yeah, I think so. Good. I can't remember. They both bring back fond memories. There is a baby in there, and that's where the evidence and information start. And as we all know, the patient is data. That concept is turned into digital twins and everything else you want to imagine. We can digitize our patients, but that's not a new idea either. 2,500 years ago, Hippocrates kicked off our revolution in healthcare by calling for careful collection and recording of evidence about patients and their illnesses. This call, which first introduced the goal of sharing data among physicians to provide the best care possible for patients, established a foundation for the evolution of modern healthcare. So you're all good Hippocratic physicians and know the importance of making these observations and caring for patients. Although that was 25 centuries ago, still, this was a motivating factor for the VPICU, but still, we haven't quite got there because we still waste large quantities of data about wellness and health and drop them on the floor or stick them in data bins and prisons, and they disappear into the ken of hospital IT where you have to fight a war to get them out. And medicine is inherently experimental. Every single transaction we have with a patient does not have a certain outcome. And if we don't learn from those outcomes, we're not doing the best for our patients. And again, we've done a gazillion experiments. We need to learn from them. And we need to capture every breath, every heart rate, everything that happens when we deal with patients. And that's possible now, more than possible now. And failure to learn from patients, just as it was in Hippocrates' day, is unethical. Okay, so the VPICU pumped along and did some papers and had some conferences and talked to people. And 2 years after that, when I got pelted at Natcher Auditorium, I got invited. The NLM had given me a grant for that for some reason. And I got selected by the Board of Regents to be their investigator presentation. On the same stage, the same presentation. I remember this like trauma. I thought they're going to start throwing stuff again at the end of the talk because they were silent. And I was starting to duck down. And 3 people in the front row stood up and started applauding. And then the whole auditorium stood up and started applauding. Wow, 2 years makes a big difference. This is some of the research we've done. I won't go into any of it because it's not really a data science meeting. It's a how did we all get here today and where should we go talk. So with that NLM grant, when they ask you how you're going to disseminate your information, so I said, well, I'm going to have a meeting, and I'll tell all these people I invite to the meeting my brilliant research. That probably wouldn't have attracted many people, but they at least gave me the money to have the first MUCMED meeting in 2008, you think? This isn't the first one, but a lot of these people were there. You may recognize, let me see, we have Anthony Chang. We have, I know you're in here, Fackler. Oh, there you are. Oh, look who's that? He's over here somewhere. And a lot of folks, this was a very hot item. This meeting was supposed to be 30 people who were interested in data science in critical care, but word got out and it turned out to be a real meeting that we sold tickets to. And then it took on a life of its own. I said, I'm not here to run meetings. So happily, people like Jim and others, they didn't like MUCMED, which was, I thought mucking around doctors and data was okay with me, but they changed it to machine learning in healthcare. And as you see, it's still ongoing. This is Dave Kale, who is actually sort of the hardworking junior data scientist who made this meeting happen. And Jenna, Doshi, Jim, etc. They're all still hanging out at that meeting. It's good. Another thing we did was come up with a lot of ideas that never came to fruition. But we had to figure out what we were going to do with the data if we could ever get it out of the hospital or from anywhere else. And then what we would do with it. And this is an early brainstorming session. which eventually turned into this, working with JPL and NASA, who are next door neighbors to where I live. It's a guy finding gold in the mountains and me finding gold at JPL, and data science researchers. And this actually has turned into one of the backbones for the National Cancer Institute, a data collection aggregation. We didn't have words like Hadoop in those days. We called this a heterogeneous data warehouse. Oh yeah, old-fashioned terms. But the idea was just get the data, get it in its native form, and let the investigators figure out what to do with it. That's become a data lake. And we had a bunch of principles, many of which you'll recognize are still worth remembering. And that is, with a lot of improvement, the structure of the PICU Data Collaborative. And the PICU Data Collaborative will promote the discovery and application of knowledge to improve the diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment of critically ill children by developing a rich, curated, standardized, multi-center, those words, I think those must have all been yours, data source to empower data science in pediatric critical care. And so we have made a lot of progress since then. I've even managed to get my own hospital to build a data lake in the Amazon cloud, and it's hard to believe, but they're putting PHI up there after a 7 or 8 year struggle. And obviously that's a great source for bringing our data together and providing compute power that we all need to do the exciting and fun stuff. So I think that's now a common information space for pediatric critical care. It only took 25 years. But, you know, better late than never. So, things will continue to change. I'm sure that only 1 or 2 of you in the room have heard about this. Maybe you missed BARD. That's Google's attempt in the last few weeks to try and resuscitate their secret AI search stuff. But this is an exciting development. So, where do we go from here? That's what we're here to try and figure out. Tell us what we need to do, and let's see if we can end up all working together to get there and figure out how we get there. So those 3 questions: where's the VPICU go? How do we leverage the PDC for pediatric critical care? Where is PEDS critical care going? The essential first question. And what's important informatics solutions and AI applications needed for PEDS critical care in the future? That's why we're here. And also we're here to have fun. Let's have some fun. Anybody gets like this, and I'm sorry. You can all wear these rather nifty uniforms, though. I'm done. Oh, those are the discussion slides that we won't use. Thank you very much. Oh.